Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. We're so excited to have everyone here. We've got a real awesome testimony that someone's going to share with us today. But on our screen, she's on our right. We'd like to welcome Olive. She's from Rwanda initially, but she currently resides in Canada. Today, she's going to share an awesome testimony, and we are so excited to have her with us. We welcome you, we honor you, and we're looking forward to hear your testimony. So I'm now going to hand the floor over to you. Please share with us this amazing testimony that you have.
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me. My testimony. I mean, I've been asking the Lord ever since I was asked to share. There's just so much of my story that I can't possibly share in an hour or two, but I believe the Lord just led me to start by saying that, the word in Jeremiah that He knew us before He formed us in our mother's womb. So I wanted to share that testimony based on that story, on that scripture, because I wasn't always a believer, obviously, but that scripture is my anchor per se. So I was born in a tiny country. Almost you can't find it, but you guys are African. You've heard it. You know where it is. But for those who I meet people who don't know about it, and they ask, "Where is Rwanda?" And myself, I'm always amazed how tiny it is. It takes a magnifying glass to find it. So I was born there, and I was born in a racial tension. So both my mother and father were in a tribe that didn't have the right, according to the political landscape, to be normal citizens, if I can use that term. So as a child, I just always felt something was wrong, but I didn't know what, because they didn't really explain. They didn't give us the details. So I just remember, let's say at the age of 5 or 7, even at that young age, I could just feel different. Could just feel, now I know it's in the spirit, but I always felt different somehow than other kids per se. And then I started going to school at the age of 7. That's when we used to go to school. Back then we didn't really have like primary school or something. So we kind of started from a certain age until we've done, it's a kind of different to explain, but so anyways, the school system, the reason why I'm bringing it that at a very young age, I was asked one day to identify myself. So basically there were 3 tribes. So there was a tribe, Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa. Most people are familiar with those tribes. So at school, they were recording how many of Tutsis are in the country. So at a very young age, they asked me that tribe, and I never knew. I like I said, at home, they never really talked about anything. Tribe, different, war. Obviously, we were also young to even understand, but at school, then, we have to say who we are. So I remember just not knowing. First, I would just go where the line is longer, and then just play as a kid. I'm just going where everybody's going, kind of thing. But then my teacher kind of said, no, you have to ask your parent. We ask you to ask your parents, your ethnic or your tribe. You can't just go where you think you belong. And so that's where the discussion of the tribe started. So because I went home and I asked my parents, and they were obviously not, they were not okay with that question. It was a little shocking to them that at that young age, I have now to know that we are different. And it was very uncomfortable to my mom, especially. But then she had no choice but to tell me, if they ask you next time, let's hope they won't, but if they do ask you, this is your tribe. Um, so you're Tutsi. And so immediately I kind of connected how I always felt strange. Um, I don't really know how, but it's obviously the Lord. I just felt something obviously is tied to that. What I was feeling as a child, is tied to that. The fact that I'm from that tribe. Anyways, so the young from grade 1 to grade, because I finished school at grade 6, there will occasionally be these random counting again of our tribe and differences, and our line or the people that are my tribe were really few. So you can imagine, as a child, you just feel really you have so many questions. But I never really had an issue at school. Like, nobody really came and bullied me or anything. It's just I carried it with me somehow, and I couldn't really discuss it with my parents. And so the reason why I started with that school situation too is because I was a very intelligent child. I did well, and school was so important to my parents, especially my dad. Everything was school. Like, you can't even take a break. You have to study all the time. Like, and then he's already saying, "Oh, all of you will be this," and he's really reaching far. And so it was very important for him that his children will succeed at school. So we did
Sorry,
an
Ola.
exam. Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to ask for those of us who aren't aware. You said there are 3 tribes.
Yes.
Is there any difference between those 3 tribes of people other than maybe the language they speak, or what actually separated those 3 people other than calling themselves a clan of this or a clan of that?
Um, there's obviously features that were given according to how people look.
Okay.
And that's a political thing that I didn't sense the Lord wanting me to go into that, because it's so political. Basically, according to the history, the colonialism came to Rwanda. That was Belgians, I believe. That's what we learned at school, and that's what it's documented as identification of groups. So they came and they spotted, I guess, 3 different groups on the land, and that was in 1900. So based on that classification, everybody kind of existed within that tribe, if I will say. So the political landscape was, when they came, was for I think the Tutsis were in the power, which was a king in 1900. So the history is very, very young, if I would say, because it's beginning recorded 1900s. Before then, they just existed on a piece of land. I don't know, or I'm not sure exactly who ran what, but there's a certain organization. It was an organized little country, and they kind of lived together without any. There was a king who was from a Tutsi tribe, and the rest, obviously, Hutu and Twa, were, according to the history again, were together on a piece of land. So when the division, or the, not division, but when they identified the tribes, I believe that's where the root came in, because the king was the root of division, because the king was to be served. So the others kind of felt left out, especially the Hutus. That's according again to what we read. that division was not good. And so the political landscape was overturned by a civil war in 1959. Again, I didn't really sense the Lord wanting me to go there, but I just want to give a little bit of what I know as a history and growing up from there and what caused as the division, because now as a Christian, obviously I know deeper things. Like I know we are one race. We might have different cultures and all that, but we are our people, you know. But that seed of division continued. So in 1959, because of civil war, Hutus wanting to overturn the power to also be heard, because there was apparently a lot of pain. You know, people didn't really. I guess they didn't really have a future because it's only one tribe. It's everything is being done by the king and the clan, and you know. So there was a civil war, and so that civil war, so many things changed. So now the king has to flee, and by that time, that's when my grandparents were killed, and so many other things that happened. That's why my parents were deeply affected and silent, obviously, because now the power is Hutu are in power, and everything now it's like the other way around, if you use that term. So my extended, you know, in Africa, you know, family is not just immediate family. So most of my extended family, like, so my grandparents were killed, and other people had to choose to go to different lands, to different countries. So that's when I will learn that some of my aunts and my uncles, they went to Uganda and others went to Congo. And so basically the Civil War was not good for that reason. So yeah, so I don't know if I answered that question. Good.
Perfect.
So yeah, so going back to school, remember my dad is really about academics, and then he was so sure because of my level of my learning skills. I guess he was really confident that I will get the national exams, which happens once a year. And so basically you're moving from primary school to high school, and so it's good to have good marks, so you go into the good schools, obviously. And we didn't really have private schools per se. It was really all about national schools. So I did the exam and I was excited. I'm sure I did everything right. I was a child, but I studied really hard, and I was also naturally smart. But to our amazing surprise, I did not pass the exam, which I was really shocked, because I knew, when you pass the exam. So we find out from that counting, the tribe counting, that it's not just me, other of my tribe as well did not pass. So that was the beginning of finding out there's actually something going on that's unfair. So basically I was born into division. And so a lot of anger, a lot of frustration. So I didn't really have any other second chance. But back then, the things were really different than they are now, because we didn't really have, like I said, good private schools. And another thing too with my story is that with that division, my parents were also affected professionally. My dad always had to switch jobs. Sometimes just will be fired without reason. And we moved around quite a lot. So we didn't really have money at that time, even if there was a private school. And to him also being that's the dream for his children. So he was really frustrated. I started experiencing a lot of anger at home and frustration because communication wasn't a big thing in my family, I have to say. So everything was internalized, just certain behavior, especially from my dad, like smoking a lot of anger, like there was no peace. There was no peace at home at all. Uh, so I just remember as a child just feeling hopeless. And another detail where God comes in the picture is that my parents both were devout Catholics. So they prayed quite a lot. And in my young mind, I was like, doesn't even make sense. If there's a God, why will you, why will he allow, you know? I remember I was also wrestling with the existence of God as a young age. Questions every hurt person will ask themselves. If there is a God, why all this suffering? Why certain people are born miserable? You know, such a deep questions, but I didn't know who to ask. So I would just scream sometimes and just go for, I was young, but I always connected with nature. So I just go for little walks or sit somewhere in the corner, look at the sky, look at the moon, and just scream and ask certain questions. So that was the beginning of, I guess, the big, the big discovery, if we say that. That's my story. That's who I am. So fast forward, so that was close to the genocide because I was born right like in the 80s, where like it's close to 90s, because in 1990, the reason why I bring that up is that the civil war started. Before the genocide, those people that I told you, some of the people who went to different countries, especially Uganda, now want to come back in the country as well. It's almost like what happened what happened in 1959 when the king was being removed is now happening, where the other people now wants to also come back to Rwanda. So there's a civil war. They attack the country. They come back. They want to come back to Rwanda. That time, there is a year between when I finished high school. So we're home. The situation is kind of, we're looking for way out. But I remember just being home, and we just hear the news because the radio was the only thing we had that the Rwanda has been attacked. And that's where big trouble really started at home, because my dad now is suspected with many other people that they've been supporting those people. So he lost his job. The last job he had, he was fired because they said he's among the people supporting the militias. So his anger even multiplied. I don't even know how to describe. It was really a tough time for him. Now he can't really provide for his family, and we are home, and and then he didn't really know where to go, because people were saying maybe you go back to a village, but he left a village when he was young to come to the city to look for life. So there was nothing for him there. He would just basically sit and drink alcohol when he can find it, and smoke, and just frustration and be angry. So that's when my mom decided to go to look for a job, because obviously we needed to eat. So I had 5 siblings, and we also had other children too, like my cousins who were living at home. I'll say we're like 10 people in the house. So my mom decided to go to look for a job, and because being a lady, and she was, I guess, less, being a lady, she was in a better position than my dad was, because it was not a real threat to women. So she found a job and she worked really hard, and through that job connection, she actually was able also to find me some kind of private school that was new. And so I started schooling there, which was amazing. I really felt like it was a good thing not to always be at home. So I went to school, private type, but my dream was still crushed because it was not being a new school, it was not what I have hoped for, you know. So, and through those years of school, that's with the war going on, even if it wasn't in the capital, because we lived in a capital, capital city. Even if there was no war in the capital, we were people were arrested all the time, including my dad. So I remember some days we'll be at school and he will send someone to come and say, don't come home, like find a way to go to friends, which was kind of a hard thing for him to say, because he knew that some of those days, there were really danger at home. There was really threats. People will come actually in the house. I've seen countless times people will come and will tell us all to freeze, and then we'll take the little money he had, and he always tried to negotiate, but nobody negotiated with him. So he was really in agony from 1990 until obviously when he died, which I will share a little story of him. One particular time for me personally where I really had it too much, that was already too much. My schooling situation, my knowing that we're different, my not having communication, nobody really communicated. Everything was just left in a limbo, we would say. So, but one particular moment that was really hard for me, that I just remember, I will always remember, that's one of my, I guess my big moments, especially with God, is, I watched people coming home at one night, and they had my dad. They have killed people. Like, it's very graphic, but as a child, I have to say, because it's a part of God's testimony, they'll go and kill people somewhere, and they'll have these big knives, very sharp knives, and so full of blood. And I will ask my dad in front of us to lick the blood. And he will beg them. He'll be like, I will lick it, but do not ever give it to my children or my wife. So that is one of the biggest trauma, like as a child, that I still, I guess, associate that to the evil, obviously, because it was not a person. And thank God for redemption. It's a heavy thing right now, but there's also redemption. That particular time, because it's not just the issue of the blood, like you're a human being and you're a child and you're seeing another human do that. And then, so long story short, that the reason why I make that moment, that particular moment for me, because I was also very attached to my dad, that's when I saw him giving up. Like, I almost felt like his spirit gave up on even trying to, because he will always try to give us hope and pick himself up after some thinking, come back to kind of regroup. But every time, that's when he kind of gave up. So gave up meaning like I never really saw that kind of hope. I never saw again. So I knew that we are basically doomed. So anyways, fast forward, there's so much I can say to my story, but that from my experience with the schooling and the constant chasing of my dad and my mom not saying much or anyone saying much, it led to, let's fast forward to 1994, because I can go on and on, but in 1994, then it is when officially everything kind of got really worse, because the president of the country was killed. There was a plane crash, which, again, I'm not going to go into politics stuff because I'm obviously not a, so yeah. So in 1994, I would basically say that, yeah, the death came in the house because so when we heard the plane crash, that's where I was. Sorry, I was kind of looking for my thoughts. When we heard about the plane crash and the president dying, somehow my dad knew, because we're all at home. We were told not to leave the home, like the whole country was in a lockdown. So we were told not to leave on the radio, and obviously we were shocked, because even despite all we went through, like the division and all that, my dad had a love, like people really had a love for the president, that we were so patriotic. So his death was a shock to us. Really, we really kind of experienced grief for him. I just remember as a child even thinking, oh my goodness, our president, that shock. So then my dad somehow, I could see fear like on his face. He knew that this is the end, because I've been accused all these years that I'm supporting this group. I've been accused. So this is the end of me, obviously. So he started putting stuff, so we had a gate in Africa. You guys are in Africa, but for Dave and Susan and others who are not in Africa, we have like these big gates and a compound. It's hard to explain, but picture a big gate that's metal. And so when someone comes in, and then we have these big fences, and the house is a little further from that gate. So my dad, in his mind, he said, I'm going to put everything I can on the gate. So when they come in, I will have, it's sort of like something will tell me that they're coming. He knew that they're coming somehow, I don't know, but he knew that people were coming to get him. So we started putting everything we can on the big gate, so that when they push it, he will hear. And in his mind, he was going to try and hide us, because he has said, I don't want to, every time he will pray out loud, he'll be like, Lord, help me to die first. I don't want to see my children bodies or my wife. He will say that loud all the time. So in his mind, he wanted to know when they're coming, and he will hide us, and he will go and meet them, and they will kill him first. So we did that the whole morning, and that's the 7th of April, 1994. Sure enough, around 2 p.m., we hear people coming. And so he went, talked to them, and somehow managed to, they left that first time. So we thought they're leaving, but they never really had a plan to leave, but instead they threw a big grenade. It's a bomb, really. We say a grenade, but the whole house exploded. I can't basically tell you that part because it's basically um, dust, because the houses are built by bricks, lots of dust, lots of, yeah, the whole house is in pieces. But then surprisingly, my dad was the only one affected physically. Uh, God angels protect all of us. And I could see how God answered his prayer. But that's a little stretchy, but he was the only one affected. It's almost like what he wanted was kind of being realized. So my dad was in very bad condition, but he was holding on to his last breath. So he took, he just, I remember the first thing I saw when the dust was kind of clearing, and obviously we were screaming. I just remember seeing him just holding on his stomach, because that's where the big wound was. And then he was like limping a little bit, limping. And he went to the gate because the people now even forced the gate to come in. And he went to the gate, tried to talk to them. What do you want? I lived with you, because I could still hear his voice talking to them. I lived here all these years. You know, I am not political. Like, he started kind of negotiating with them again. And this time they really left because they said he would die. From the injuries that we saw he has, he would die. That's okay. So in the meantime, he came back to the house, and we are all like in pieces, as you can imagine. And my mom somehow she's very numb. She was just completely numb. She didn't know she was become like a little child. My dad is talking to her, but she's traumatized. So my dad told, so in Africa, we had people working for us, for those of you in America. So we had like people helping at the house, and you pay them. They stay with you and you pay them every month. So we had a house boy, if I would call him that way. He was God sent. He was amazing. So my dad talked to him because my mom was obviously shocked. And he told him to bring us the neighbors, because my dad didn't know if the neighbors will be okay, but he just said, bring my children to this neighbor. And then so basically we say goodbye. By my older brothers, because I have two older brothers, as soon as they heard that grenade and the whole thing, they jumped over the fences, because they were old enough to do that, and they just ran away. One of them, I never actually saw him again. That's another story, because they all got killed. But I just remember that moment, this houseboy bringing us to the neighbors, and my mom coming along, and he would just carry one by one on his, because we were like all shocked. And our neighbors, luckily, she said yes, she was a widow. She said yes, she had a lot of compassion, and so she hid us. So the hard part that comes after is that the people came back again, and because the neighbor were really close, and also wanted to hear what happens to our dad. My mom was numb, and I managed to leave her, and I really wanted to know what's happening to my dad. I went between her fence and our fence, and I was just listening. So basically, I heard, to spare all the details, I heard him being killed, and I heard his last words. They killed him with, yeah, traditional stuff, which I'm not gonna go into details. So then the houseboy told my mom, yeah, it's done with for your husband. It's just, they just did finish him. So what followed after was that they said we didn't find his wife and the children, so they started looking for us. Yeah, just you can imagine the sounds. It's the people are really overtaken. That's again, I come back to this, that being a spirit. It's, you're not dealing with people. Um, so they're overtaken. They will start just saying, we have to search everywhere. We have to search his wife and the children. They must be killed. We want to see their bodies as well. So at that time, this is the first God's intervention in my life, because we were really ready. Like we didn't really see any way out. But a neighbor in that time, as they're looking for us, he heard it. Another neighbor who was not being, he was a Hutu. He heard it, and he came looking for us. And so, because he knew that when we stay there, they will find us easily. So he came, took us one by one again on his shoulders, making sure nobody sees us, and hid us in his house. So we were there. Nobody saw us, which is another, because people were in the neighborhood. It was a miracle of God that in that particular moment nobody was there. So we stayed here with him for 2 weeks. Um, Amazing man, always like he'll bring food. He'd be like, nobody knows you're here, you're safe, and then he'll comfort us. Um, in those 2 weeks, one particular morning he came. He's like, I want you to come. So my brothers left. My two older brothers, we don't know where they are because they ran away. So I'm with my sister and my younger brother. Um, so we had another brother. Anyways, it's a long story, but we have another brother somewhere else. So basically, I'm just left with my two younger siblings and my mom. Um, and then he came looking for us, and he said, "You have to bury your dad. I want you to say goodbye in a proper way because we can't leave him there." So at a young age, we buried my dad and this neighbor. Um, and it's another interesting thing. My dad has started building a septic tank, first septic tank, I guess. It's for the toilet. And so he was building it, but he felt, because he's very entrepreneurial, he felt like I'm going to do it in a way that I have like 3 chambers or something. So he made it almost as if he knew that he's going to use, like we're going to use it to bury him. So he was in the middle of building. So anyways, we buried my dad. That was really a hard thing for me as a child. And my mom is just still traumatized standing there. And we did it. The neighbor did most of it, but he wanted us to see to have closure. So as soon as we finished the burial, he said, unfortunately, the next morning, you have to leave because as the reason why I'm bringing that, as going back to the house, someone saw us. And so now that they know where we are no longer safe. So anyways, again, to fast forward, because it's a long story. Fast forward, we had to leave that neighborhood. And so my parents knew a priest. I told you guys that they were Catholics. So they knew a priest and who had an orphanage. He was from Italy. And they were friends. So, and he had an orphanage, and he didn't really live too far from us. But to get from where we live to them was going to be a miracle, because the whole streets are now full of people. Look, the killings have already started. There are bodies everywhere. And in that particular area where the priest lived, there is the army. So we can be killed by a bomb, we can killed by a person. So to get there, it was really going to be supernatural. But this amazing neighbor came and said, I'll go ahead of you. You cross the road and you just run. Because I see that you're better off if you can make it there. So to this point, I don't know how it go. I always try to imagine. I don't know how we go there other than supernatural. Yeah, supernatural because they saw us and they followed us and were running, but we managed to make it to that place. Um, it's supernatural. So we made it there. Um, my mom, you can imagine the situation, like she's just not talking, she's just frozen. And after a month, so the priest saw us, and there are other people in his house as well who fled to him. Um, Somehow he had a radio. He was able to hear the news, to capture the news, what's going on. Being from Europe, he had a very he was a I guess he had ability to know what's going on. So he knew that if we stay in the city, the children, because he had I would say maybe 50 kids, including all the people, the families that ran to him. He said, if we stay in the city, because the war is between the people. I don't know if I told you guys what happened. So the civil war is going on, but the people also from Uganda, the military from Uganda, from outside the country, they're fighting now because they know the genocide started. So there's a war, the civil war, but there's also a war between the army, Rwanda army, and those people from Uganda. So according to the priest, he's like, if we stay here, this is no good because they're getting closer and closer. So we find ourselves in the middle of the war. We have to leave. Um, so he packed. They had, because it's an orphanage. They had cars and they had drivers. So he managed to hide us. That kind of mix us because we're children. Nobody will know who we are. But people like my mom and other adults, it was a little difficult for him. But he managed in a way to kind of put everybody together and hide. So now from that place, we go to a rural area, but together it's another, I can't even explain that scene, like a lot of bodies. You can find out on the internet, lots of people, lots of bodies in the river. We have to cross there's a big river, like, and as a child, you just like, this is hell on earth. And it was not an easy crossover, but we made it to that place, thank God. Um, so we meant to go to another orphanage. They had partnership. Um, so we stayed there for, that was a safe haven in a way, because the war hasn't really started there. It was a safe haven for at least 2 weeks. Nothing was going on, except to deal with our trauma, obviously. So fast forward 2 weeks after we arrived, the war also began there. But luckily, nobody knows because nobody saw us. But we had so many children. That's also was another trauma. So many children that were being brought to the orphanage, who just lost their parents. So we who were older, we had to care for those children who are coming in. And sadly, I don't know why, I think it's trauma now that I know it. Sadly, all of them, like we will lose children all the time. It was another traumatic stuff to go to. They would die, I guess, because of lack of touch, or like we'll lose so many children. Anyways, so to fast forward, so we stay there and the children are dying and other people are coming in. So the priests were advised by the local authorities, if you keep taking people in, we're gonna burn your orphanage. So there was a big threat as well. But luckily, before they could do anything. Um, the the war was over. Like the military now has taken the whole country. Um, so that's how we survived, basically. My mom and my brother and my sister. So yeah, that's the survival. And but the devil wasn't done. Even when we survived, after surviving, um, we had to move because, anyways, maybe to explain it better is that when you are in a war zone, um, the some places are not safe. Even if the war is over, they want to make sure that there is no remaining soldiers in the area. So they wanted all the children, all the orphanage to move in a different area. So um, we have to move from that place and to go in a different place. And I remember as a young child, because every time they will move, they will burn a bridge. So it's a military tactic so that those who are left behind will not have a way to follow them, kind of thing. But we had no choice. They told us, you guys have to cross. So I remember as a child, and they put a little tree so every person will cross. As a child, I was like terrified. Um, so I didn't know how to get over the fact that I might find myself in the river with the bodies. And so that's another traumatic thing. But anyways, we managed to cross over. Um, and then fast forward again, because I can go on and on. We lived in a camp for at least 3 months after the war is over. And my mom decided to go back to the city to see if there's a way we can go back, because we can't obviously live in a camp for a long time, for all our lives. Somehow she picked herself up with few other people from the city, because in that new place now we were in, there were people from the city. So that's how we went back to Rwanda. She was given a little house to stay in, and now she had other children from the orphanage who also came with her. They came with us. They said, we're going to stay with you for a long time until we find our parents as well. So that's how we went back to where we started from in the beginning. And with a lot of trauma and healing, we needed healing. So yeah, I guess I can just go there when it comes to the genocide part. Fast forward, did I get to know God? The Lord redeemed my schooling situation, because I was able to go to school, and I finished high school, and he opened a door for me to go to Europe to continue my studies. So I went to Belgium for my studies. And when I got there, um, a lady who befriended me was a strong Christian. So we're neighbors, and she was from Burundi. So she was like magnet. She just did not leave me alone. So the Lord has told her that I needed a friend, and I really needed to know him. So she did not leave me alone. And at that time, honestly, I didn't even want to, because of so much trauma, I did not want to see any person or associate with a person. I had lots of struggles relating to people. I just shut down. I just wanted to be alone, and it was a hard time to even study, because I had lots of nightmares. I didn't really sleep. It was a hard time, and I had physical manifestation as well. Like I was nauseous all the time. I will feel um, suicidal thoughts. I had suicidal thoughts all the time. Anyways, it was a hard time. So God's timing was that He put that lady in my life, and as soon as she started mentioning God, I was so angry. Uh, but again, with the seed of prayer, like I couldn't really deny that God existed. Like there is a conversion, I guess, that the seeds that I saw my mom praying, my dad praying, and now this lady, I'm like, oh, this is no coincidence. And in my pain and my misery, of course, it's like a prayer, but I was asking him to help, you know. So that's how I got to know the Lord. It was in Belgium. So she invited me over to her church. She was going to a church. The pastor is also from Congo, an amazing man of God. And the Lord spoke to him too, that he was really a father. Like he allowed me to ask him difficult questions, but I could see the love of God in him. And so I got to know the Lord when I was in Belgium. And basically, it's a long journey, but healing started there. Um, I was able to sleep for the first time in a long time after accepting the Lord, because I saw something real in these people away from my country, loving me and talking about God being good. Um, and my need was being so big that I had to choose God. I had to choose. So that's my beginning and beginning of a journey with God. Um, and from there, supernatural, like I can go on and on. Supernaturally, God really showed himself to me and opened my eyes big time to see that things through the lenses of spirit instead of seeing them in the physical that I was always looking into, and understanding the evil forces that are, like Pastor Paul is saying, that are behind what's happening even now. Uh, so forgiveness was the number one thing I had to deal with. It was not easy. I had to wrestle with it, but I saw the cross, and it was like an introduction to, yes, God's love. We know that God's amazing love by giving us something that we can never even understand until we reach the other side. But it challenged me. It challenged me to think beyond just a tribe and to think about even those people who have done those things. Um, Initially, I did it so I can be free. They tell you forgive so you can be forgiven. Basically, it was a selfish way, but God took me to a journey where I could see them on the cross. It was like a high mark beyond myself. I was just like, they were blind just like I'm blind. In terms of what he has done, it's remarkable. That's why when Dave and Susan and Michelle and you guys asked me to share and meet Pastor Paul and the rest, excuse me, I can't help but say that there is hope. There is hope for the human race, because I was born, I really believe I was dead. I'm a living proof that out of the dust, you can make something beautiful. And like Pastor Paul shared last time, it's like Ezekiel prophesying over those bones, because I was spiritually dead, emotionally dead, but here I am. So basically, from the first time I had an encounter with him, because again, it takes the Holy Spirit for us to know the Father and to know the Son. I had the help of the Holy Spirit, and I saw the Father. I saw actually the Father and the Son. All of you guys know the Lord. I don't have to explain or to preach to you, but that's when my emotions started opening up, and that's I cried actually for the first time. During all that time, I couldn't cry. So that's number one that I show, like, oh, my emotions are actually now something is happening. And then he put strategically people in my life that are true lovers of God, like no religion. It wasn't about religion. It was just perfect people, and I still hold them dear. like Pastor Robert from Congo in Belgium. Like, he's a true saint. I mean, he's a man, but he really demonstrated that father's figure in my life. And God has to use a father to show me a father, to show me him. And then he also used that lady, my friend from Burundi. She really demonstrated the love of a mother. She was older than I was, a tender heart of the Holy Spirit. And so that is what the Lord has done. And so spiritually opening my eyes to see my story from a different angle helped me to heal. Uh, it sounds easy. It wasn't easy, I have to say. It was a journey. So forgiveness, and all that time I have to go back home too after school. So dealing with healing was a process. And my people still affected, because my mom, I told you, and others, my brothers, others, the land. And now that I know the Lord, I want to serve as a bridge. I want to talk about forgiveness, but it wasn't always easy. So it's been a journey, but God has done so much, even connecting me with SLG to see deep things in the spirit and to understand even the um, deeper way of dealing with trauma. And that was God's hand. So I can go on and on and on, but he basically just changed my life. And going back to that scripture that he knows us before he formed us, I can kind of see the hand of God before he formed me, because I'm now passionate about talking about reconciliation. I'm passionate about shunning evil in the sense of um, showing what we go through the lenses of the spirit, not always just the physical, also showing us how powerful the human will is, the power of the will. We can use our will, our God-given will, to affect life, or we can actually be used to destroy lives. So, like I said, I can go on and on, but I also wanted to say, I wanted to give God all the glory, because he uses pain. He recycles, if I can say. He uses pain for even if it's not the cause of pain, but he actually has a way of using pain to make something out of it. So out of my pain, I was able to read biographies of great saints, some of the great saints of God that also have been through pain. And obviously the Bible also is full of people like Job and others who have been good through some stuff, but have came out of it greater and able to actually reflect the life that you couldn't have had without going through it. So for me, one of the greatest treasure that came out of pain is that I can have a heart to feel what people feel. I honestly couldn't have had this heart without going through the pain. Um, like, it gives me the ability not to always jump to conclusion when someone is going through the pain, but sometimes to sit with them and to ask the Lord his guidance, but sitting with them. So I just wanted to share that, also encourage ourselves, because obviously there's still so many people who are going through a lot of hurtful situations, who are also on the road of healing. Know that we all have to go through pain to feel pain, but to remember that God, the Father, has that kind of compassion for the hurting, and he is not to be to be blamed for the cause of it, but he actually uses the pain. So that's number one thing that I see in my life that God has given me through the pain, because I always ask these questions. Why was I even born? There's another whole side of my life that I can share right now because it's not the point, but he has brought people in my life for specific reason of sharing of feeling their pain so I can share um, my story. So I thank him for that. And also, as Pastor Paul was talking um, about the church, yeah, we have a great responsibility, I believe, in the whole world. Although we look to the government, unfortunately, for solutions, but I do believe we are the solution because what Pastor Robert and my friend did for me, they were so full of God. They were not perfect people. Like when I talk about them, you know, some of us might feel like they have it all together, but they actually positioned themselves to be carrier of God's presence. And it really worked. I saw for the first time real godliness. It's like they were a tabernacle of God. Like I really had an encounter with God, sitting with them and talking to them. And so that's another thing I wanted to encourage ourselves. It's like Jesus talked about us, the church, like Pastor said, being the light. I really believe that what he also meant is that we become instruments, we become, we take a step of faith, we become that tabernacle, that dwelling that he actually, by faith, not just by faith, but also it's just a positioning. So I had another privilege, in so many ways, to meet people like that. And I've been so ever grateful that God is, rebuilding his church, because like Pastor Paul said, the church has really not been a shining light. Unfortunately, it was all about religion, but also not dealing with our own wounds and aligning with the evil forces instead of with aligning with God. I'm not really talking down around the church. I'm just sharing my experience in Rwanda. But on the other side, even in Rwanda, there have been men and women after I got healing that I could see the life of God in them, that I could actually feel God so close to me in a way I wasn't always aware of. So thank God for that.
Amen. Amen, Olive. Thank you so much for sharing.